There are some people I understand who could walk up to the Queen of England and have a nice casual conversation. You know, how you doing, fist bump? What's up? Most people cannot do that. Typically, we feel a little bit uncomfortable around people who have some notoriety about them. You know, the Queen of England, a president of the United States, maybe a sports star, maybe a famous actor. We would be a little bit uncomfortable around those people, and this is true of almost everyone, but there's always some exceptions. So, what about people with Asperger syndrome? What is it like when we try to have a conversation with just a normal person, not the Queen of England, not a president, not a famous icon, celebrity, but just anybody? Well, we tend to feel the same way that neurotypical people would feel around the Queen of England. Everyone's the Queen of England. We don't know how to talk to them. We don't know what to say. We feel uncomfortable in their presence. We feel a little bit self-conscious, maybe even, well, not maybe, but typically inferior, just being in their presence. So it's really hard for us to have appropriate social interactions with almost anybody. So number one is this: we have limited interactions, and there's a reason for having limited interactions. It's because we have limited interacting. So it's hard for us to interact with an individual. And because of that, we don't interact with individuals. We just don't have the conversation to begin with because we know it's going to be a failure. Social defeat. It's not going to come across well. And what's worse is when we do try to communicate, when we try to talk to an individual, there's something that happens inside our brain that I don't know the clinical term for it, so I just call it brain scrambling. At least that's true with me. When I am called upon to talk to somebody, I say called upon when the opportunity presents itself, something inside my brain just, it's kind of like it goes haywire. 1 second I'm okay, I'm perfectly fine, I'm thinking in a straight line, everything is normal, everything is centered, and somebody says, hey, how you doing? It's like there's an explosion, a quiet explosion in my brain, and everything is out of order, and I can't talk. And when I try to talk, it's nonsensical. It sounds weird to the person listening to it, and it sounds weird to me. I can't believe I said something that dumb. So we have limited interactions because we have limited interacting, and it's natural. It's not something we can help. It's something we can work on. It's something we can learn to deal with, but I don't think it ever completely goes away. We can mask it pretty good if we really, really work on it. But even then, most Aspies that I talk to tell me that they still don't like to do it. Even though they may be able to come across as neurotypical, the discomfort is still there. It's just the surface masking that allows them to get away with it. And by the way, most Aspies, I don't think, at least the ones that I've talked to, I don't think they mind the social circumstances as much as they like the pressure when they are called upon to be a participant. My circumstance, I just don't like to be around people in general at all. I don't like to be around crowds, don't like to be around groups. Number two is what we would call inappropriate actions and inappropriate reactions. Do you know how to behave around people? I don't know why people generally have an innate sense of how you're supposed to behave when other people are in their presence. When you're in close proximity with other people, you try not to touch them, you try not to do this, try not to do that, try not to breathe down their neck, so to speak. That just comes natural with people except for people with Asperger syndrome. Sometimes, we get ourselves into trouble. And it's not intentional. It's just because, we're just blind. There's this blindness in our brain that we don't know what our actions should be. In fact, sometimes we don't even think about it. We just act inappropriately. No thought whatsoever. It just comes out. And immediately we're labeled as a little bit weird, a little bit strange, and sometimes not a little bit, sometimes quite a bit strange and weird. Some of the embarrassing moments I've had in my life. Oh, the stories I could tell. So we have inappropriate actions and sometimes inappropriate reactions. So somebody is talking to us, having a conversation with us, and we don't know how to respond. We don't know what to say back. Somebody says hello, and we say, what? Or we don't say anything, particularly when you're younger. When I was a kid, a typical conversation with an adult would be, the adult would say, how are you doing? And my response would be, fine. That's the end of the conversation. Now, other kids my age, somebody would say, how you doing? And the other kid would talk their arm off. I mean, he'd actually tell them how his day was at school, what sports he's playing, what games he's playing. He'd tell them all about his family, and the adult would, be sorry if he even asked because the kid won't shut up. Not true with most Aspergers. Now, there are some people with Asperger syndrome who do that. They overtalk, they overreact, they overread into what other people want to hear. Number 3 is limited eye contact. Most people with Asperger syndrome don't like to look people in the eye. I don't know why, but I don't. Even if I'm looking at a photograph, I don't like to look the photograph in the eye. It's not even a real person. It's just or a painting. It's not even a photograph of a real person. It's somebody's rendition. But still, there's something in my brain. I don't know what it is. I'm going to leave that up to the technicians to explain. But I don't like to make eye contact. That is very common among Aspergers. I remember when I was a kid, I've told this story a couple times in other videos, but when I was, I don't know, maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, somewhere in that age range, my dad would do wallpapering and painting for other people, kind of a side hustle to earn extra income. I'd go along to help. Not that I helped, but I would go along to help. Big difference. And I recall this one woman, I remember because she was German, and I love German people, took German in high school. But she was kind of a nuisance because it bothered her immensely that I would not make eye contact, and she said something that I thought was a little bit off. So talking about inappropriate action, she was the one who was being inappropriate. And she said something to the effect that people who don't make eye contact are bad people. That thing that the eyes are the windows of the soul. So if you don't make eye contact, apparently you've got a bad soul or something. She didn't say that. But that was one thing that stuck in my mind. The people noticed that you don't make eye contact. But even after she said it, I still couldn't make eye contact. She got mad at me. She was really offended, or at least she pretended to be. It could be she was just so arrogant she didn't like the idea that she was being defied, but she was trying to trick me into making eye contact. What do you do with that? Well, as you get older, sometimes you learn little tricks, like you look for somebody's eye color, or, you look near their eye but not in their eye, or you glance at their eye, or you play a game where I'm going to stare at you until you look away. Staring game. That's a little bit tough to do, but, it works, makes you the other people a little bit uncomfortable. Number 4 is reading gestures. So gesturing with your hand or with your face, with your eyebrows, people communicate a lot with their faces. You ever seen a dog communicate with his ears? Or a dog communicate with his tail? People communicate with their faces. It's kind of like a visual communication. There is audio communication. Obviously, we communicate with our voice and we communicate with our faces, facial expressions. But just like people with Asperger syndrome may misread what somebody is saying, we may misread their gestures, particularly their facial gestures, expressions. So they're looking at us angrily, and we think they're looking at us with inquisitively, or vice versa. We get them confused. Not every Aspie does that. I don't think I do that too much, but a lot of people do. So we have difficulty reading gestures. Number 5 is we have difficulty understanding emotional signs. This is a little bit akin to misunderstanding gestures because it's nonverbal. So some people, well, you think they are crying when in reality they're laughing. That doesn't happen often, but it could happen. But people who are down in the dumps, maybe a little bit depressed, and we just don't pick up on it. We don't understand what this person, what their brain, what their mind is going through. Now, that's a little bit challenging, particularly if you're married, if you're in a close relationship, that the other person expects empathy from you. And we have no problem with that type of empathy, effective empathy, except we just don't read the signs, so we don't know that, well, we're not triggered. Our button is not pushed, so it doesn't come out. So we don't always understand emotional signs. Number 6 is because of all the above, we tend to be isolated. We have very few friends. If you were to ask the average person that you know, how many friends do you have? Most of them would say probably 5 to 10, I would guess. I didn't do research on that. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. But I'm talking about really close friends. Something bad happens in your life, you call these people up first. Who are these people? Who is on your A list? Well, if you're a person with autism or Asperger syndrome, chances are you have a very short or non-existent list. You don't have an A list. You may have a B list, people that you know, they're not your friends. People maybe you can confide in a little bit, but they're not your friends. But when you stop to think of my A-list, no, I can't think of anybody. Or maybe 1 or 2 people. Now, I'm not including close family members in this. I'm talking about people who are not related to you. Who do you know that you consider a good friend? Chances are you may not know anybody. Do you see those 2 rectangles on the screen? If you like what you heard, all you got to do is click on one of those 2 rectangles and we'll just keep on talking. Our conversation will continue until you're done, and then we'll bring it to a stop. But if not, thank you for stopping by, and we will see y'all next time.